Welcome to Risky Thoughts with Rob and Roy.
I'm Rob.
And I'm Roy. And today I want to explore a trope. And I was kind of thinking about it. When we were young, I remember my parents, I'm South Asian, and we would spend a lot of time with our friends, when you're just playing around and stuff. And, sometimes not enough time studying or doing our chores or whatever. And I remember my mom telling me one time, she's just like, Roy, you should be doing more of this stuff because, these are not going to be your friends forever. And even to this day, when I meet someone new, I always am idealistic with it. I believe that we're going to be friends forever. You know what I mean? But as of recently, going through a breakup, and with this breakup, there was no friends involved. There's no option of friends, not by my choice, right? But it really, it definitely hurt me. It definitely hurt me very deeply. And it kind of even got me thinking about and kind of creating case studies of all the friends I actually did lose, which I pride myself on trying to maintain friendships. Like me and you've been friends for almost 10 years now.
Even more than that.
Well, even more than that. And there's been periods of time where, we haven't talked for 4 years. You know what I mean? But it's almost
on and off, yeah.
On and off. And what happens is that one of us will initiate a conversation. It's just almost like we're back where we were, and we're kind of an update and stuff like that. Part of that is also I just want to just kind of describe myself. I'm a person that I will exit your life for many years and then I'll come back. The people who have stuck around and still my friends, they understand this very intimately. It's I'm an introvert. I need to go in a kind of isolate area and understand my ideas. We were even just before this, we're analyzing Batman, Christopher Nolan, and this is what I'm doing. I'm carefully looking at these ideas, so when I do come back, I can bring something fruitful for everyone else, right? And but this takes us back to university, and there was a friend of mine, and he was from a culture, if you're from an Arab culture, where brotherhood and brotherly love, and that is a huge priority and ideal, right? And I was this guy who just consistently ran away, just going home, hanging out by myself, but I would hang out with him a lot. And he kind of told me, he's like, Roy, are you just kind of like a school friend? And I understand that trope of the school friend, work friends. Those people.
There's a way to define the difference.
Exactly. It's the people that that they're not going to spend the effort to kind of meet up with you outside of work.
Right.
I find myself doing this a lot with everyone. People, you guys hang out together? You guys hang out outside of work? It's bizarre for people. It's almost like everyone is internally accepting that same trope. At work, we're just going to use each other to be, make the time go by faster. But as soon as it's done, people are gone. But anyways, I was just thinking about that. And, he asked me, are you a school friend or are you an actual friend? And I obviously unarticulate, immature. I gave some stupid answer. And ever since then, my relationship with that person has just, gone. But it's interesting because he almost resembles exactly a personality like my brother, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just well, my brother's hanging around all the time, right? And it's just, I'm just trying to understand what makes a friendship better, and yeah.
So do you, I haven't in what you've just said, I don't the question that goes through my head, and I don't think you've answered it for me, is do you think that there's validity in the statement when your parents, because my parents said the same thing to me, right? I hung out with a very tight-knit group of friends for, at this point, we've all been friends for 25 years. And I'm just curious to know what your opinion is. Do you think that your parents were right in telling you, look, friends aren't forever, right? You're gonna get older, you're gonna move on, you're gonna have different priorities, and you're gonna realign your life in such a way that it may not have room for those friends that you thought. And I think anyone that had friends when they were a teenager, young teen, even before teenagerhood or adolescence, I should say. Everyone had that friend that they thought, yeah, they're my best friend. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm forever going to be close to this person.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's a truth in your parents telling you that that's not the case? You may see that now as a young individual,
Mm-hmm.
and because that's the other part of the statement is like, oh, you don't understand this yet. You'll understand it when you're my age or when you get older,
Yeah.
right? And so my question for you is, based on your experiences and particularly your experience with this individual you were referring to from university,
Mm-hmm.
do you think there was validity in your mother's claim, or whoever it was that told you this, whether it was your mother, your father, whatever authority figure it was? Is there truth in that statement? Like, you're not going to remain friends forever.
I think there's truth in the statement because when we look around, and if you guys even think and just kind of imagine your friend groups, yeah, and even your own experiences, like you don't keep all those friends. They're not there forever. And that's a function of number one, their personality, right? And their position in the world and their views and, you know, disagreements that may occur and how those disagreements are kind of handled, right? And those kind of slights against you and your dignity and respect and all of those kind of things. Um, and I believe that is true. Like, I believe that is true. But what I really want to kind of get at is like, perhaps like the necessity of friends and why it's important. And I think, okay, taking it back a little bit more, I think when your parents are saying that and when people are saying like that, saying those kind of things, and the person that was closest to me in my life when the person I broke up with, like, you know, she told me, it's just like she didn't have any friends,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm seeing this a lot with a lot of people, right? They don't have friends, and perhaps it's behavioral issues with that individual, right? Um, and I think it stems from an insecurity, right? It's an insecurity of and like an abandonment that these people and that the way it even sounds, or like, don't worry about this, they will abandon you.
Mm-hmm.
They will abandon you.
So before you go into,
Yeah.
because I think this is where we're going to end up going, and obviously this is what we do when we talk. We're going to explore the reasons as to why the friendships break down over
Yeah.
time. But before we get there, there's one layer missing, and I think it's behind the idea of the question when I asked you, do you believe there's truth behind it? I think the person sitting next to me, like the Roy sitting next to me, is gonna do a really deep analysis on this and come back with an answer when the
Mm-hmm.
time is right,
Yeah.
and that's the purpose of our conversation. But I think what I'm trying to suggest here is when that question gets asked to your parents, like if you were the kind of kid that was willing to question your parents when they issued you an instruction
Yeah.
or told you something or delivered some trope to you or some cliche statement that was being made, if you were the kind of kid to ask, but why mom or why dad, like
Yeah.
why am I not going to be friends, it's very unlikely because at that age you just, yes, you ask a lot of why questions, but
Yeah.
these are not questions that you ask why to.
Yeah.
It's an information or it's an instruction from an authority figure that you kind of just accept.
Yeah,
Like,
I also do think that it is an ideal too. Like, and kids are idealistic, and they will perhaps ask why. You know, like because it's
okay,
so important to them. They're your friends, man. Like, how can they ever leave you? How can they ever, and but I think the answer that the parents give is very trite. Like, it's not enough. It doesn't get to a high enough resolution for the kid to understand. In fact, I actually think that it's also it's such a high resolution that they don't understand it themselves.
so this is the whole purpose of our
Yeah.
conversation, I think, and this is the whole reason why I want to have this episode or whatever you want to call it. So I want to have this podcast right now on this topic because I think that there are a lot of people out there who hear the same thing from their parents
Yeah.
or other authority figures when they're younger. And perhaps if you're a younger audience listening, you can pick this up as wisdom that maybe you don't get from the authority figure who's told you this.
Mm-hmm.
And, also in the opposite direction, if you are an authority figure who's delivering this message to a younger person, maybe consider the thoughts and the ideas that you and I are about to express right now as a possible explanation for the children so that they kind of like accept this idea a little bit more realistically,
Right.
right? Because I think what happens is a parent be like, oh, they're not going to be your friends when you get older. Trust me,
Yeah.
right? Like, oh, believe me, when you're older, you'll understand. Well, that's not acceptable. Like, how do you expect a kid to calibrate his actions and choose friendships, accordingly if they're, and because the truth is, look, when I was a kid and someone told me that your friends aren't going to be there forever, there was a lot of faith I put into my friends,
Mm-hmm.
and I relied on them for real life
Yeah.
in like decisions. Like
Right.
uh, I would maybe perhaps I would make a judgment call myself based on an expected investment from my friends that were surrounding me,
Right.
and that could be dangerous because if I'm willing to make a wager that I'm going to get the resources required from my friends because they're always going to be there for me,
Absolutely.
and then one day they're not,
Yes.
then I can miscalibrate my decision in that moment because I'm
Right.
working on the pretense that I was right. My parents just don't know what they're talking about.
Yes. Yes.
So it's important for the kid to understand why,
So this is the first nugget of this conversation.
mm-hmm.
The first nugget here is that you're talking about expectation, right? You're talking about an expectation of what your friend is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So to kind of pragmatically approach this is like you need to really understand what how far is your friend going to go along with you on this journey,
Correct.
right? And it's the acceptance of it, the reality. Your friends are going to get married. They're going to have kids. They're going to spend time with their kids. They're going to spend time with their families. They may even get enveloped, right? Now, I'm not suggesting that is what should happen, right? I think there is a more egalitarian, a more ideal that's actually practical to implement, but they wall themselves out. We're guys, so once there's a girl and that comes into the picture, that guy's gone. Like that guy's on a hiatus. Sometimes he never even comes back.
Yeah.
He doesn't come back to see Timon and Pumbaa. Like he does not see us anymore. Like we're just eating worms by ourselves here, and that's the reality.
But the irony of this is that like I am that guy. I have become that with my wife and my kid to my friends. But anyways,
Yeah.
we'll get to that in a bit. But I'm laughing at it because I can actually see it in my life.
I've seen it in my life too, man. And then we're like, fuck that guy. You know what I mean? He's whipped, bro. Everyone has their own journey. They're gonna figure things out on their own time, right? Mm-hmm. The reality, what we're trying to propose is that ultimately, I'm already starting to feel out where we want to go with this. Like, friendship is paramount to your life here on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get that twisted. If you're not doing it right, and you're not having friends, you're doing it wrong. Like, life is extremely hard. When I broke up, with
The individual.
the
Yeah.
individual, I almost said her name accidentally. I'm so sorry. There's two entities here. There's her, right, with the no friends, but she had family. Family's another one that and there's a key in that mechanism that allows for you to develop a friendship with people that are biologically related to you by force.
Mm-hmm.
And replicating that with other people is the kind of key here. Obviously, when you have kids, it's different. Once the guy has a kid, you understand that is dropped, and people take it personally. And once again, it comes from insecurity of being alone and understanding that this person has his own journey, and you must let him go. You know what I mean? And that's our parents now.
Yes.
That's our parents saying to us, they're gonna abandon you. They only come when they want something. Well, no shit. Anything we do in life, if it's our mom or our dad, we do it because we want something. If your brother asks you for something and you're not on good terms, you do it because he's your brother, right? You do it because
there's an obligation.
There's an obligation, and if you really look at it down the rabbit hole, you'll actually see you're actually doing it for yourself too. You're maintaining that because you want to see your brother do well.
Yes.
You want to see him do well. So you're doing it for him. So don't get it twisted. Like, all interactions are for some sort of self-preservation, some self-gain, right? But understanding it is the key, and that's how you go forward and maintain a friendship. Anyways, I broke up, and randomly, just weeks before I broke up, and this is the kind of like coincidence, is like you started talking to me. Unreal.
I know.
It's just unreal. Like, that's the cyclical element of our lives, and because we're the same age and things are happening, and regardless, relationships are hard, and whatever it is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you called me out, right, and we started talking, and we created a podcast,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, literally,
Yeah, it's a very weird way how this is all unveiled,
yeah,
but you're right. There's definitely something funny about that.
like 6 months ago, 7 months ago, I don't think I would have been in your basement. I don't even think I would have like heard from you. You know what I
No,
mean?
it would have been absolute silence. Yeah.
But Jordan Peterson, some guy, it's a dude we follow very heavily because he articulates things very clearly, where things become almost undeniable. And he says like a true friend is that, you know, when you're going through pain, if your friend is also going through pain with you, that's good. We have a lot of friends that are like, you know, oh yo, I did this huge project and I successfully did it, and then you got a friend who's kind of like, yeah, but like that, this another project is a little bit bigger, or they start talking about themselves, and like, you know, um, that's not a true friend. That's not the type of friend I'm referring to. Like, I pick the people around me very carefully. You know, you are the closest five people you're around,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and then my other friends too, during that moment, like this could have been, this was a hard breakup for me, very difficult, you know, very difficult, but I shortened the time from perhaps an infinity of recovery to maybe only like a couple of months, right?
Yeah.
Because, and I told her when I was talking to her, I'm like, you know, she's like, "Are you good?" Right? And I'm like, "Yeah, man. I've had so many friends that just prop me back up. You know, they propped me back up and got me, you know, back to almost close to Roy,
Mm-hmm.
right?" And she's like, "Oh, that's nice for you. Like I don't trust friends, you know, like
Yeah, then that's kind of like a depressing thought. I mean, we, the thing about like when your parents see what I'm curious to know is like when your parents tell you something like this, when your parents are relaying a message to you that be careful, your friends aren't going to be there forever,
yeah,
right? Or even like the cliche saying of like blood is thicker than water, like
yeah,
these things. The part that is very interesting to me is like the way that you're telling your story right now is one that is very unique in my opinion. Not a lot of people can be your age and look back on their life and still say that the people that they had selected at their younger selves to be their friends
mm-hmm.
are actually and truly still there for them now
Yeah,
in their adult life.
yeah,
Like, and when I mean adult, I'm not saying 18.
yeah,
I'm talking like in your 30s.
mm-hmm.
It is very difficult because my parents at the age of 30, you know, they were kind of like in that moment of, or they were going through the period of time where there was a transition of losing those friendships. Their friendships were dying,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like the ones that were supposed to be there forever.
Yeah,
And then of course they went on, they met their new neighbors and became friends with them and whatever. And my point is that like you are speaking from a place of what I would consider to be an anomaly
yeah,
because not a lot of people can go back into their life and say that, oh yeah, I said to myself as a kid, I'm going to be friends forever, and I can look back now and say I actually honored that commitment
mm-hmm.
because it is rare. It is hyper rare. And for most people, there's usually the one, maybe two people that they know in their life that they've been friends for a very long time with.
Yeah,
Um, and I know I said I wasn't going to open this conversation and talk about this part of this
yeah,
on the podcast, but
yeah,
fuck it, it is fitting. Um, my best friend,
yeah,
the individual that I still consider my
yeah,
best friend.
yeah.
But that being said, there was definitely a time frame where we certainly fell apart. We are still farther apart now than we ever used to be. There's no questioning that, and we are both caught up in our own lives, and we both have families, and you know it is difficult to maintain that connection. I mean, we probably could if we wanted to put the effort forward,
Mm-hmm.
you know, reinforce and re-strengthen that relationship. But for some reason or another, like we have moved on into being, you know, prioritizing our families and so on and so forth. And the part that I find that the message that is very important that I think that needs to get relayed back down to a younger version of me, which in this case would hopefully be someone out there listening to this that is younger or has kids that are younger,
Mm-hmm.
is look, the trick is not to get consumed by like the superficial in life.
Right,
Because
right,
I
right,
agree with
right,
you, Roy.
right.
Like the
Yeah,
friendship is critical.
right.
In
Can I add just a little touch here? I'm
100%.
so sorry. So sorry. So once again, when they're telling you that, don't focus on these friends here. Like the question is like, what are they telling you? What are they? It doesn't have to be your friends, or it could be friends, family, society. What are you telling them to focus on?
Mm-hmm.
What is it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is it getting money, getting things, social validation? Because that shit's empty. You know, like
Yes, it is.
you get something, and everyone on Instagram's like, "Oh my God, sick," and they forgot about it. But here's the thing: we're talking about the friendships we've lost till this day. I don't know about the shoes that I bought like a year ago.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't remember it. Like I don't care, right? I'm talking about that. These friends are the things that are the real wealth of the situation, and I'll add on to that in a little bit. But continue, yeah.
So you kind of went exactly where I wanted to go with this, which is like, look, if you're talking to your son or your daughter and they're you know coming to you being like, oh, but they're my best friend and I want them to be around forever, and you're like, but it's not going to be the case, because I know ultimately you're trying to prepare them for the worst, right? As a
Mm-hmm.
parent, you don't want your kid to grow too attached to a situation where when the failure does come,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be heartbroken, right? And it's just like the same thing when, like, oh, when you first, your 16-year-old boy comes home with a girlfriend. There's a probability here that you're not going to be marrying this girl,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's just
Mm-hmm.
face the facts.
Yeah.
Um, but the same thing happens when it comes to friends. Like, parents will tell their kids, like, look, you're not necessarily going to be friends forever, and you should come to terms with that. And the kid's just like, yeah, whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
typical teenager response. But it is very, very important that, look, don't just stop the conversation there.
Yeah.
You really, if you're truly doing this out of a place where you're trying to protect your child's feelings from being like ripped apart as they get older and the friendship maybe dies, then really dig a little deeper and give them a true understanding of what it means, that what you're trying to express to them. And I think in that process of trying to dig deeper to provide the explanation to them,
Right.
as an adult looking as an authority figure that's trying to provide advice for a younger person, I think what's really going to happen is you as the adult are going to realize that you truthfully don't even believe what you just said.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you try to dissect this and you start looking at why are my kids not going to be friends with their kids as they get older,
Mm-hmm.
well, the reality is it's because you are going to get caught up in what they call life. And that life as we know it in North America today's day and age is filled with, like, you got to get a good job, you have to make money, you have to get married, you have to
Socially
have the two-car
acceptable.
garage,
Yeah.
and you got to have the white picket fence, and so you get consumed by all of this,
Mm-hmm.
and it very easily can distract you from, like what you said, the stuff that matters.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a subjective statement, and maybe I'm speaking from a point of personal opinion
Yeah.
here, but look, the friendship is far more fulfilling than any socially constructed
Yeah.
material good that you can acquire.
So okay, that's definitely a subjective point, but I want to make it objective. The reality is like you get a thing, right? And this is the science part of us now talking, right? You get a thing and you're happy for a certain time, a little period of time, and let's give that a number.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a 2. You get a new pair of nice kicks, that's a 2. Someone looks at your nice kicks, that's a 3, right? But at the end of the day, you have a big negative, like a massive negative that you're not even looking at, and you're actually continuing that path, and that negative is loneliness. Like you are alone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, is your shoe gonna make you feel less lonely? I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, I am not someone who has a lot of things. Like I'm not like when I need to make it rain, I will make it rain. I'll do anything under the sun to make it rain. Let's just say that. But at the end of the day, it's just like when I look at people telling me, it's like, Roy, you need to be on this path. You need to have security here, and you got to be doing this and that and that. I'm like a ragtag guy in the world. I'm just a fucking animal. Like I just do whatever I want,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're telling me this, right? And perhaps one reason I'm not doing is because I have the wealth of friends, friends to engage in a deep discussion, to navigate this fucking big, massive unknown. You know, we've been told these things and these tropes, over and over again. And, it's like that is, that's, that's life. To buy shit, to consume. It definitely gets our society further. But I'm saying fuck that. because at the end of the day, like, that, I know I'm going on a tangent here, but it's very important. That objective, like, it's just our planet's like dying here. I don't know if we're like looking at it, but anyways, you
100%. So
see where
let
I'm
me
going.
let me
Yeah.
let me like reel you back in, because you say it's a tangent,
Yeah.
and okay, it sounds like one, and for someone listening to this, they're probably, what the fuck is this guy
Yeah.
talking about? The world coming to an end? Like, we're talking about friends here, and
Yeah.
like losing friends and your parents. There is a very strong connection between this,
Yeah.
and the message that I think that you're really trying to get across is, look, these lost friends are a function, like, you're losing them as a function of conceding to the social construction perspective
Bang
of
on.
life
That's
today,
it. Yeah.
right? Like, we're losing valuable things such as
Yeah.
friendship. It is one of many
Yeah.
elements that I would use to evaluate like the wealth of my life. Friendship is one.
Yeah.
Family is another.
Absolutely.
Like, and the list goes on. But for now, we'll leave it at that, because we're talking strictly about friendship. So, although you went on a tangent there, I think what you really are exploring is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that the person, like the authority figure who's going to provide this instruction or this wisdom to the child, by being like, oh, when you get older, you're going to lose your friends. They're not going to be around forever.
Mm-hmm.
So don't put too much don't put too much emphasis on this
Yeah.
friendship.
Yeah.
That's the underlying message, right?
Yeah.
Like, give up now before you even,
Yeah.
because you're not going to end up being
Yeah.
friends with these people later.
And can I just add a small little thing here? So the fear of, I believe that the people will perpetuate this, that friends are not a big deal, focus on this and this and that. It's because there's also a fear of the abandonment that they perhaps, that's a hard thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's a fear.
Yeah,
You're
you know what?
motivated
Maybe
by
it is.
fear
Mm-hmm.
that you don't invest in this friendship because something bad will happen. And that's a hard thing. It's almost like a breakup. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's almost like you're losing someone.
Well, that's what I was saying before
Yeah.
about like talking to the 16-year-old boy, saying the likelihood of your relationship surviving. Yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rooted in their own experiences and like the fear of, yes, you're going to be feeling some form of heartbreak in the future if you invest too much in this. It can be consequential. But again, I would rather live my life with the goal to have talks like this, to have a friend like you, where I can invest my time and get something that I feel is far more fulfilling than any toy that I can buy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't, and maybe that's just because who we are, right?
Yeah.
People out there listening who are into like buying the nice cars and buying the nice house, and I mean, I actually almost feel sorry for
I feel
people
so
that,
sorry.
that are
Yeah.
stuck in this mindset. It's like, you will never feel fulfilled if you go down that avenue, and
No,
you
man.
are far better to invest your time and energy into building a strong friendship. Because look, you can be dirt poor living on the street, and if you have a good friend beside you, all of that kind of goes away in through the feeling of like expressing your love for each other. And that's why I'm saying it's not limited to friendship, but in the context of this particular conversation,
Right.
it is one of the items that I can say, definitively, look, I would rather be broke
Yeah.
and sitting, on the corner
Yeah.
with a friend beside me that I can share this with,
Absolutely.
than to be, as wealthy as Jeff
Yeah.
Bezos,
Yeah.
sitting alone in my,
Ivory tower.
exactly, right? And I think the bottom line for me and the takeaway from this whole thing is like, look, we're trying to explore, like you said, all these different like cliche lines that you hear over and over and over
Yeah.
again, and sometimes they're in movies, and more often than not, almost, let's put it this way, you can wager that there's a very high probability, if you picked a stranger off the street and you said something to them that was that cliche line,
Yeah.
there's a very high probability that they also were told the same thing by some authority figure in their life
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah.
And we're trying to explore all these things and look at them, and I think that you and I always come to the same sort of conclusion on it. And it's like, all those cliches
Yeah.
are rooted in like some socially constructed bullshit, right? Like, we're living in a world where it's all about instant gratification, it's all about showing off, it's all about these different,
Yeah.
like, anyway, I don't know, I'm going on a tangent. I think the bottom line
I
is to
think
say
we're
that
gonna we're gonna continue that line at some point. That's a very interesting line of thought here, and it kind of perhaps is the solution. Like, for example, like, I'm able to do it. it's very difficult, mind you, and it's an ideal way of living to be like, fuck society.
Mm-hmm.
Like, fuck them. Like, they don't know what they want. They don't see it what I see. And I know it's so matrix and conspiracy. It's really not. It's really just like, what I see is people just buying stuff non-stop.
Right.
And they're prioritizing material things like money. Definitely, I'm also aware that security is an important thing. But what I'm trying to say here is that if you have all these kind of vessels, right, of security and stuff like, we live in a secure society, bro. Do you know what's happening in South Africa? Do you know what's happening in India? We're living in a secure society. So when you tell me, oh, you need long-term security, I don't know what you're talking about because we live in a very safe, boring. We live in York region, I live in Markham.
Yeah, and I live in
like
Vaughan.
in Toronto.
Mm.
Like nothing's happening. I'm not gonna die. But what I do see is that there's this one vessel called consumption, and it's flowing to the brim. And then I see things like friendship that are just almost dry.
It's decaying.
It's decaying. So if we're always talking about yin yang and balance, why are we continuously buying stuff? Why are we so anxious to make more money? You know, why is it that we have to have a huge house? We're heavily medicated. We're a heavily medicated society, and it's pointing to something deeper. And then we definitely want to start to resolve these things, because I think now I believe that the tropes that we've been told is constructing like a, as Nietzsche would say, a negative, false consciousness. You know, so those people who are, you got to do this and you got to do this in this order, it's just like, no, like, where's that coming from?
Mm-hmm.
You know, where are these ideas coming from, right? And it's not one person. And you know, some people who believe in aliens and shit like that, they're gonna say it's all no, it's just us. It's a transcendental idea that's running this machine, and we're trapped. You know, we really are trapped. And that's why, you know, exploring friendship is a very key one, because once you start to realize that friends, like, what would you, if I were to do it right now, if I were to value you right now, let's just say $400,000, $500,000, right off the bat, $500,000 for Rob, $500,000 for another friend, because they just provide you with so much more, like, fulfillment.
And I would even argue that you couldn't put a value to it.
You couldn't. But I'm just saying, for those who are just trying to get out of this idea of consumption and Instagrams, it's like, you know, well, how many likes would you attribute, you know, make
to a friendship,
to a real friendship where you're fucked up and you talk to them, and you guys are both fucked up, and you guys both come back out a little bit better through rationale and logic and just that camaraderie, you know? So how many likes, right? You know, like, okay, you got 100 likes on this picture because you were hot, or, you know, you had this nice car, maybe 200. You know what I mean? You paid $200,000 for that, to get that social validation. But you're getting social validation from other people who are also stuck in this matrix. Like, I don't. Anyways.
Yeah, and
super tangent.
That's definitely but that's okay, because I think it's going to lead very nicely into what we're sort of building here for the next few discussions that we're planning to have, because they are all kind of surrounding the element of social construction and like where we're at today in society. And I think you said also somewhere in there, you were talking about the fact that, like, you know, you're buying, you need to get security, you need to do this, you need to do that. Well, the problem with that thinking and with that chain of thought is that, like, you're buying security relative to your life today. Mm-hmm. But if you were 10 times richer than you are right now, in an instant, if you could snap your fingers to be 10 times richer, you're just going to raise the bar. It's an inevitable it's an inevitable cycle. You'll never achieve the level of security that that's going to get you to stop running the race.
It's socio-economic security.
Right.
That's what you're buying.
My point is, if you were someone that's poor, living on the corner, if they had what we have today, just like in our lives, they would feel as though this was well beyond what they had ever envisioned for a secure life.
Yeah, man.
But we're sitting here in this house, looking to the guy next door with the house that's twice the size, thinking, well, that's more secure than me now, so that's what I need. Yeah. You know, and it never stops. It never ends, and you'll never fulfill your actual desires for that. And the difference is in friendship,
Oh my
it
god.
is fulfilling, and
Yeah.
it's immediately
Yeah.
fulfilling,
So
right?
there's actually like there's just a consilience that kind of happens here, between, I know we took down one episode or whatever,
The online
the online
dating.
dating,
Yeah.
when we talked about that infinity,
Yes.
right? This is actually quite applicable here.
Yes, it is.
This kind of like expression of, you're on social media and you will always see someone better,
Always.
always, and it's hardwired that actually catapults sales of certain things,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, instead of now you're trying to find a man or trying to find a woman, it's just like they're using that same tactic. It's not it's just a system,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's no one person, it's a system of ideas, that's using that one, trying to sell this one thing. You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah.
And before we go too far here from the original point, um, I think we can get to a point of conclusion here. So I guess ultimately what we initially wanted to look at here was, look, as a parent, you're gonna recite the shit that your parents told you,
Mm-hmm.
and because I find myself doing it too, and like the reason I'm focusing on these thoughts is like I really want to make sure that what I tell my son
Yeah.
is something that I think has value, and is not just some regurgitated
Yeah.
nonsense that I was told,
Yeah.
just to fit the social norm.
Well, it came from his father, like
Right.
rather than so much from some other idea that's been
Correct. So although I'm
repeated.
the medium that's going to be speaking the words,
Yeah.
if I go forward and just pitch these fucking
Yeah.
ideas that I've been told my whole life,
Yeah.
then that's not really coming from me. That's
Yeah.
just a regurgitation, like
Yeah.
I said.
Might as well just leave. Because
Yeah,
some
I'll let the
other guy
TV I'll let
let
the
the
TV
TV.
tell my son what
Yeah,
to do, right? Like that's
exactly.
ultimately what's happening.
Yeah.
And so I am really trying to think these things through in terms of what messages I want to send to my son, and perhaps future kids if I have them.
Yeah.
And I hope that people out there are willing to also do the same here. And like, all I'm getting at is think very carefully about what message you're delivering to the future generations, because if we're just going to continue walking this line of like blindly believing in the in like the things that we hear in the movies, and like these fairy tale stories, and like go to work, you work hard, all
Yeah.
these like
Yeah.
standard philosophies, like, look, just think it through. All I'm saying is think it through.
Yeah.
And with respect to the topic of the friendship one that we're discussing
Yeah.
here today, rather than saying blindly to your kids that you're not going to be friends with these people when you get older,
Mm-hmm.
maybe try to encourage true friendships so they do get to be in their life for longer.
Absolutely.
Right? Like maybe just restructure the message.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
And I'm saying the same thing, and obviously I talk a little bit more abstractly and use a kind of pseudo, like science-ish type ideas, but there's parallels and everything, and I think it's more easily understandable. But like, it's like a generational curse,
Mm-hmm.
to do that again, and then we have questions like, they're always going to be the same thing's going to repeat again and again and again. Well, this is how you break the wheel. This is how you break the cycle, right? Of not having friends, right? This whole came about because I had a discussion with my family, and they were my siblings, and they were shitting on me, right? They're like, Roy, we understand like you're making money, right? Like, and it's good money, but it's like you're doing it in such a random, non 9 to 5 way. Like, I work when I want to work, and I bring home like the cheddar. You know what I mean? I do what I want. You know how it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not disapproving of it. Definitely, I did. People are very like, whoa, like there's no security there. Like, no, man. That's why I focus on my body. I make sure my tool is good. I work out. I run all the time. But, it came about from that, and then the insults come out, and it's just the whole like, we can even talk about how you lose your family members too at some point. They come out and they're like dumping on me, and they're like, like, your skill set is not like optimal for the machine. I'm converting it and making it
No,
more
but
of an
that's
insult.
really what they're saying.
And that's what
yeah.
they're saying, and that it's not optimal to keep this fucking thing going, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know that. Like, that's fine. I'm cool, man. But you listen. I have friends. Okay.
Bottom line.
At the end of the day, so and it shuts people down. I'm not trying to shut people down. I'm just trying to make them aware that, like, the friends are also a source of wealth,
Mm-hmm.
right? There, you may not see it, but you will participate in group cohesion and projects and teamwork. I work with a lot of men, right? So it's like that is all so necessary, right? To have a functional group that has the right morale and you actually get more energy out of people. So when you talk about productivity, it's just like being able to be someone's friend is a lot more powerful than telling them to go do this task. It was like, no, you want to do this task because this is our group, and like we're gonna do it. This is the goal. We're all synergized, and you get a lot more energy that way.
So yeah, and I'm gonna add one concluding statement to that because you have inspired an idea in my head. That's like, look, at the end of the day, we are all just ants that all belong to a giant anthill, and the reason that ants are capable of surviving is due to the cooperation amongst the community.
Yeah.
Right? And this concept of like focusing on, consuming more and more and more is breaking us further and further apart.
Yeah.
And like devaluing things such as friendship will be detrimental to our species in the long run.
Absolutely.
And I guess our ultimate goal through most of our conversations is somewhat rooted in some scientific basis that we are kind of looking at the success of our species and looking at the things that we're doing wrong and thinking, guys, like, wake up. You're not realizing what's happening here. You're just you're a hamster on a wheel, and it's not a sustainable way to carry forward our species. And I think this is a completely different conversation, but we'll sort of end it there because, like I said, I really do like the idea that we've resolved here that, this concept of like you're not going to be friends forever is a message that we don't believe should be casted forward into the future generations.
Right. Exactly.
And if it is casted forward, then at least do it in such a way
it's well articulated
so that you're articulating your thoughts clearly.
Exactly.
So it's understood by the future generations.
Ultimately, there's truths and like to the whole thing, right? And it is a truth. It's a perpetuating truth.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So by saying it, you perpetuate that truth to occur.
It
doesn't have to be that way.
Yes.
All right, so that was another episode of Risky Thoughts. If you don't mind following us on 24MY, we are probably going to open up a Patreon page at some point in the near future.
Keep your eye out for it.
Yeah, keep your eye out for it, and hope you guys enjoyed this discussion. Okay.
Yeah, and we're always looking for some feedback. So if you don't
message us on 24MY. So it's 24my.productions on Instagram. Just send us a message. Maybe we'll analyze one of your tropes, right? And it kind of helps you free us from that thing, or debunk it, or maybe see if it's valid. Right?
Yeah, and we're hoping to get some disagreements our way so that we can question our own beliefs and hopefully
like we want to be wrong.
Yeah.
Like we really, really want to be wrong. Like that once again, I think we said that in one episode, but we are the type of people who are looking to be wrong. Like we want to be wrong. It's not cocky.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Have a good night.
All right.